Welcome to my very special bonus audio episode. I had the privilege and honour to sit down with the remarkable Miss Kirsten Rausing for an hour. I couldn't choose which parts to put into our film as her story is just so fascinating, so instead I have kept it whole for you to hear. We discuss where her journey for the love of pedigrees, especially the thoroughbreds, began, how she came to own Lanwades Stud in Newmarket, her respect and admiration for the trainer Sir Mark Prescott, and quite what it meant when Alpinista won the ARG in 2022. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I'm with Miss Rausing at your beautiful stud in Newmarket. What drew you to the world of racing and moving to Newmarket?
Well, to start with the first half of your question, I came into racing the wrong way, back to front, because I was very interested in equine genetics at a young age. I started looking at pedigrees of dogs, then cattle. My grandfather taught me, and then from there we went to racehorses. We were racing the bar the whole time. Yeah. It became more and more difficult. So when I was a schoolgirl, I became obsessed by thoroughbred pedigrees, and my teachers felt that the little brain matter I might have should not be occupied with thoroughbred pedigrees, which I could write down by heart, sort of 8-generation pedigrees of famous mares and all that. Those were the days. But so that's how I started. I came into the thoroughbred world by studying pedigrees, and then when I was young, I used to do a lot of 3-day eventing, and the only horses I could afford were broken down racehorses. And it used to be between me and the knackerman who could buy them. And so I had 1 or 2 very good thoroughbreds that I'd bought for the equivalent of about £600 in those days. But of course one had to wait a long time whilst their tendons dried up, that sort of thing. So in the interim period I studied their pedigrees and so on. That's how really I came into it. And then, while still a schoolgirl, I got, holiday jobs first with some great friends of my grandfather's in Sweden. They had the biggest thoroughbred stud farm in Sweden we are talking about the 1960s, late 60s, and they had imported British stallions and so on there, and through them I was sent to be a stagiaire in France during school holidays, doing yearlings in France, which was very useful. I got to learn all the bad words in French, which was handy, and then after I finished school, I went to university, and whilst I was still studying, I, by happenstance, came to Ireland as a travelling groom on a horse flight. This was in 1971, January, and I'd never been to Ireland before, but that was my introduction to the Irish thoroughbred breeding world. And I was lucky to make great friends in Ireland and to be eventually employed by the late Captain Tim Rogers, who was the forerunner and shaper of the Irish thoroughbred industry such as it is today. And he it was that developed the legislation, the fiscal legislation in Ireland in the late 60s, early 70s, which made income from thoroughbred breeding, in particular income from stallion syndicate, exempt from tax in Ireland, with the result, of course, that all the best stallions, certainly in Europe and sometimes in the world, congregated to Ireland, and the Irish industry had a fantastic upsurge, with the result of young John Magna coming in he was born into the business, but he was able to develop Coolmore accordingly, and Ireland became what it now is, a leading power in the thoroughbred world. And so I lived and worked in Ireland for, basically from the mid-70s onwards. And I always wanted to try and find a place of my own, but in those days, land prices in Ireland, because of the very positive tax situation in Ireland, land prices shot up, and conversely here, because at the time, late 70s, the British economy was in dire straits, 3-day week, blah, 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 strikes and all this sort of thing. So the few means I had, they would not have got me any place at all in Ireland. And here I thought I had enough to buy a small farm, but as it turned out I didn't. But I did come to Newmarket, where I didn't really know anyone, and I had a little bit of I had the advance of my inheritance from my grandfather. He said to me, "You can have it now, and then you won't get anything when I depart this life." And I thought, gosh, this is such an enormous amount of money, which it was to me. And so I came here to Barclays Bank with this particular sum, which in retrospect seems laughably little, but at the time I thought it was enormous. And I went to Barclays and said, "I wish to lodge this with you," thinking they'd be very happy and impressed. They said, "Uh-huh." And so, "Is there anything else?" "Yes," I said, "I would like you now to lend me multiples of said sum." "Why?" "Well, I wish to purchase a place called Lanwades Stud, which was then 150 acres. So they asked me, had I any collateral for any such loan? "Yes," I said, "I absolutely have. I've got 2 really, really nice mares, and I brought them both from Ireland. I bought them both as yearlings, and now they are, I can't remember, they were about 4 and 5 years old at the time, carrying their first foals. One was a non-winner, the other one had actually won twice. And so they became very, very stroppy, the bank manager, and very condescending. And he more or less patted me on the shoulder, saying, 'My dear young lady, I will have you now know that you are no longer in Ireland. We are now in England, where we do not accept live animals as collateral for anything, because in our experience, when you look at livestock, very soon you'll be looking at dead stock.' And I couldn't argue, because
it's true.
It is true. Anyway, so I pleaded, and they greatly enjoyed it. I mean, I was very young and green, and in the end, after much wrangling and production of a of a business plan that I knew was pretty unrealistic, I managed to get them to agree to me purchasing what was then 150 very run-down acres of grassland, and some old boxes and fencing in poor repair and so on. Yeah. Anyway, the point is that basically, of course, the place was its own collateral, so the bank owned it, right. And I worked for them. And perhaps we shouldn't name the bank. We can, so you can edit that out. But anyway, so I worked for the bank for a few years, and as it turned out, they made the mistake, because the 2 mares were Rhoda Hexan and Sushila, and Sushila's second foal was Petoskey, who won the King George and Queen Elizabeth stakes, beating, amongst others, Rainbow Quest, Oh So Sharp, and Law Society, great names of their era. And I then had a half-sister to him to sell the same year that he had won at Ascot. So she made 400,000. This was in 1985, when money was money. So as soon as I received the cheque from Tatzel's, I rushed to Barclays Bank.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to pay you, I want to pay you. Oh, they said, well, would you like to lend some more money? No, I want to out from under.
Yeah.
Released
from your claws.
I want to be liberated, and so on. So that I was lucky, and since then I started with 150 acres and 5 mares of my own, quarter share in the stallion Niniski, and I think I had 5 men that I took over from the previous owner.
Got you.
Colonel Fries, 5 men employed, and of course the colonel wanted me to keep these men because I was so green. I didn't realize that that way he would avoid having to pay redundancy for them,
course.
you see.
Yeah.
So I remember standing them all up and saying, you are very welcome to stay on working here, and of course I really wish that you would, because you obviously know the place much better than I, and so on, and I'd like you to stay, but if you do, I hope you will accept that there must inevitably be some changes to work routines and so on, and if you don't feel you can accept this, then I would rather you left now, not in the middle of the breeding season. This was December the year before, and of course today this sort of little speech would be construed as constructive dismissal, but it wasn't then. But anyway, at this little speech, 3 of the 5 immediately resigned in disgust at the thought of having to work for a foreigner, a woman, but worst of all, and this one I can understand, somebody considerably younger than them. That is difficult to take instructions from somebody half your age. So anyway, I was left with 2 people, and Noel and Jim, and I have to say they both stayed with me for many, many years and beyond their retirement age. So having started with 2 men and 150 acres, I now have 46 people employed, of whom 37 here in Newmarket and 9 at our yearling farm in Ireland, to which I oscillate. And half of them are women, exactly half are women. And we have a few nationalities, not so many, but I would say the majority are certainly Irish and English. Sorry, she wants to go out.
I'll let you out, little sausage. There you go.
She'll soon want in again in about 2 minutes.
Your breeding operation is regarded as one of the best in the world. What does that legacy and your bloodlines mean to you?
Well, I'm very flattered that you should think that they're so good. I have obviously very stern competition, not only in this country, but this is a worldwide industry, and the competition is really on on several continents, yes. And we've been lucky enough to breed some pretty good horses and important winners, both at home and abroad, particularly in Australia and Hong Kong, as well as in Europe and America. But I suppose my only advantage in this was that I started very young, and I've had, at the time, I had time on my side. Time was the only thing I had plenty of.
Yeah.
Things are different now, I can tell you.
I can imagine. I mean, just looking around your office, I can see you don't have a huge amount of time.
But I mean, I so enjoy what I'm doing, and the thing is, working with live animals, as I'm sure you all know, there's so much can happen, so many incidents and so on. People ask me, what do you do as a stud manager? And it occurred to me that as a stud manager, one's job is really to identify risks and then take preventative measures before they are realized. And most often you can think of 99 possible things that can possibly happen, but it's the 100th thing that you don't think of, that's the one that happens.
Totally. Well, I think people don't really realise how difficult it is to keep a foal safe in that primitive years of its life. You know, it is really quite difficult.
Yeah, not only foals, but horses of all ages and so on. And as Sir Mark would have told you, probably his famous dictum that the thoroughbred racehorse has but one ambition, which is to commit suicide. That's what he says. And our role is to prevent this happening.
Yeah. Well, one of your beautiful colts is being sold at the Tattersall sales in a few weeks' time. Tell us a little bit about his breeding and what your hopes are for him.
Well, he's a nice colt. I think you refer to lot 20. Yes,
exactly.
He's by the great champion racehorse and sire, undefeated Frankel, who stands at Judmonte Farms, just a few miles down the road from us. And his dam, the colt's dam, is called Alwilda. She is about my 5th generation homebred, so the colt is 6th generation homebred. Alwilda is by late Lanwades sire Hernando, and she goes back to a mare called Al Rukaba, whom I bought off the late Aga Khan for, in the context, very small money, as she was a 2-year-old in 1985. So she's recent purchase, but she had won a very poor race at Brighton, and she went in the December sales and had a noticeable tendon, which meant that she would never race again. And I was able to purchase her together jointly with my great friend Sonia Rogers in Ireland. We paid 18,000 for her, divided in 2. So, you know, and she's been a great foundation mare for us both, but particularly I'm fortunate for me. She used to spend 2 years in Ireland, 2 years with me, back and forth and so on. But I was the lucky one who kept a few daughters of hers, and they begat a real family. And I made life very difficult for myself because I wanted to continue the Aga Khan's tradition, having named all the females in this family beginning with the 2 letters A and L. So Al Rukaba, from her Alouette, and Alouette became the dam of champion Alborada and champion Albanova, who in turn was second dam of Alpinista, who won the Arc de Triomphe in 22.
Yes, I saw her statue.
And Alborada is the second dam of a good horse I have at present called Almeric. And so it goes. And so I still love studying pedigrees and so on. I don't use any computer programs or anything like that. I'm sometimes asked by trade magazine journalists and so on, particularly the younger ones, they say to me, "Oh, and can you tell this magazine who does your matings?" Well, first, when I first got this question, I couldn't quite understand it. They said, "Who does your matings for you?" Because there are professional people that do just this. So I said, "Well, modestly, as a matter of fact, I do it myself." Really? And what program do you use? Do you use such program or this or that and so on? And you can pay a lot of money for these computer programs. So I said, no, I don't use any of these. I have one of my own. What? You've developed one of your own? Yeah, I said, it took me a long time, but I've done it. Oh, and are you planning to monetize this? No. I said, it's very personal, it's private, and I'm not sharing it with anyone. But it is very handy because it's fully, I can carry it with me all the time and so on. Oh, really? So I said, yeah, it's in here. It's in here. But they couldn't quite understand that. But I feel, to me, running a stud, the bonus, the thing I most enjoy is, well, I enjoy it all really, but I do enjoy doing the matings, and takes me quite a lot of time because, unlike some of my competitors, I also have to factor in a budget, which not all of my competition have to look at that angle of things.
Yeah, totally. I spent the morning obviously with Sir Mark Prescott. I mean, what a man, what
Isn't
a stables, what a total legend, to be honest. You've worked with him for 40 years now. Have you run out of things to discuss yet?
No, I don't think so. We have plenty to discuss. We have a lot of mutual interests, even outside racing, I would say.
Yeah.
And but he's a fount of knowledge within and without racing, and of course history and all sorts of things, field sports of all kinds, and theatre, such like. But our association came about by pure chance, really, because it all started with him buying a yearling filly off of me about 40 years ago, and for some unfortunate reason they named her, the owners named her Last Second. She was purchased. They came to the sales, they ran into the ring at the last second, hence she was so named. Okay. But I never like anything being called last in a horse, But anyway, she overcame this, and she was a very, very good race mare, and eventually later also a very good brood mare, becoming dam of French classic winner Aussie Rules. But anyway, Last Second was the beginning, and she, having shown very good form even at 2, better still at 3. I had a filly who was a yearling when Last Second was a 3-year-old. So it seemed obvious to ask Sir Mark if he wished to train her.
Yes.
And so it goes. My yearling was not a great star. She was called All Is Fair. She won a race or two, but she was no star. But she was soon followed by Alborada, who won the Champion Stakes twice and who was world champion. Yeah. And so we've been conversing since then.
Yes. Oh, it's just brilliant. Could you just end by telling us one of your fondest memories?
Of
life with Sir Mark, with your wonderful, wonderful horses.
Well, there are so many. It's difficult to know which ones, but I have one that he tells back to me, and he might have told it to you already, in which case you stop me. But it concerns my great, wonderful race mare, Alborada. And after she won the Champion Stakes for the second time, she was invited to run in the Japan Cup. Have you heard this story?
No, we haven't.
Anyway, so I was very reluctant. I thought, she's done everything we've asked of her and more. And I don't want to subject the filly to this long journey to Japan at the end of her racing career and all that. And so, but Sir Mark was very keen. Obviously, she would get much more international exposure if she won in Japan, and there was the little matter of some very good prize money,
yes.
and so on. And the Japanese were very generous hosts. They paid, travel first class, and for the trainer, his companion, the jockey, his missus,
the whole lot.
The whole lot. Everybody got to turn left in the plane all the way to Japan. And I said, no, I don't want to, and so on. Anyway, so then I said to the Japanese, if she comes, she will then not come back to England. She'll have to go on to Kentucky, because this will be her last race, and she will go to Kentucky to be bred to a stallion there before she comes back to England, because I wasn't going to subject her to go to Japan, back to England, then to America.
Yeah.
So, well, this, of course, turned out to be impossible. The Japanese don't work like that. Everything has to be, the same and routine. And,
right.
And so I said, well, that's fine. Then she won't come, but thank you very much. And different matter. So anyway, the Japanese somehow managed to alter their rules and so on. And so the filly went to Japan with the girl who looked after her, and William Butler, whom you met, and so on. And then a week later, Sir Mark followed with the jockey and his wife, and so on and so on. And I said, so the Japanese said, and you, the owner, must come also on the Sunday. The race was on the Saturday, so you must arrive on Sunday before. And I said, no, I'll arrive on the Friday and race on the Saturday. So, no, not possible. Many dinners, lunches, press conferences,
the whole
shebang. I said, no, thank you, but I can't possibly be away from home a whole week and so on. And so the week went on. She was there, Sir Mark was there, George Duffield, the jockey, was there, and so on. Anyway, the point was that, I ought to really throw a few clothes in a suitcase and so on. I just couldn't bring myself to, so I just knew I wasn't going to get there. And anyway, about, I'd say 4 days before the race, Sir Mark rang me from Japan. She'd done a very, very good piece of work together with the German horse Lando, because they were in quarantine together.
Yeah.
And she beat Lando without even trying. I mean, she wasn't ridden hard or anything, but she was quite better than Lando. Anyway, so Sir Mark rang me. She had trodden on a sharp piece of flint, and cut a frog up to the coronet band and so on.
Oh, no.
So apparently, I don't remember this, but I have had it told back to me by Sir Mark. Apparently my reaction was to say, Mark, this is suboptimal news. And he tells it back, I sound like Lady Bracknell, you see. So this is suboptimal news. Anyway, poor girl, she had to have her foot wrapped and local antibiotics and all this sort of thing. So she never got to race, to run, and Lando won it.
No.
So she probably would have won it, yeah. But anyway, so then she couldn't actually travel to America until she was reasonably healed from this. And it just goes to show what a little piece of sharp flint can do, and what can you do? I mean, this is the 100th thing that you hadn't thought of.
It sums up horses, doesn't it? Yeah.
And so on. But as far as I was concerned, I mean, she was my shining star and still is. And I'm so fortunate to have her descendants still.
Yeah, well, it's remarkable.
And she lies here in her entirety under a tombstone.
Does she? Oh, that's so lovely. How special.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I get quite sentimental about the old girls.
I was going to say, I think it's, even though it's a business, having animals, you can't help but fall in love with them.
And it's only right that you should, because they trust us so, and they want to do what we want them to do.
Yeah.
And I'm always, just coming back from Fairy House yesterday, it is amazing how fantastically cooperative these yearlings are. We ask a lot of them. They are not even fully grown, or one would assume, compared in human terms, their mental capacity is probably that of a child in a way compared to us.
Yeah.
And yet they are so fantastically biddable, tractable, and so on. So I am always fascinated by how the animals react, and I spend a lot of time just on a summer's evening. I can spend a lot of time just sitting watching mares in a field. People say, "What are you doing?" Well, I'm just watching these mares and what they're doing and what they're saying to each other and so on. And from a farming point of view, what we do is very environmentally friendly and positive. We don't use any artificial fertilizer or anything like that. We keep a fair bit of land open, but with hedges and shelter belts and so on. And so I take some pleasure in sort of arguing with people who say, "Oh, we should build houses and all that on this grassland."
100%. 100%. Well, that's something that all of us in the countryside are fighting. We're up against,
And here in Newmarket now, they've just built 1,000 houses round about us here, and they're seeking planning permission for another 1,000 in what was the Animal Health Trust right upsides me. And I fail to see the logic, because of the 1,000 they've already built, certainly not more than, at a guess, 60% or so are sold. The others are standing there unsold. So it doesn't seem to me logical to build even more. But I don't really understand how they reason. Eventually, I suppose they will be sold. Eventually. But it seems an awful shame. I'm speaking selfishly now, East Anglia, who has such wonderful farmland and grassland, to have it covered by solar panels and itty-bitty little boxy houses and so on. Presumably there would be other places that
would suit. Yeah.
Or indeed, if every new house was built with solar panels, then we wouldn't need to cover thousands of acres.
Well, exactly. Exactly.
But it's a bit, I mean, the country is run by urbanized.
Well, this is something that I truly believe in, and I am trying to help. Well, just have a voice, and say this is that it is madness, and that we need to protect.
It is a pity
what we have.
Yeah, but coming back from Ireland, I see the same thing there, and they've got, of course, the best sort of grass in Europe almost.
Oh my gosh! I went there in it must have been June, sorry, and coming from here, it was
green.
I flew into Ireland and I looked down. I thought, oh my
40
goodness.
shades of green. Yeah.
These farmers are going to get cha-ching. We're in with the haylage. It just looked phenomenal, and you think no wonder it's the home for these horses because it's just grass on tap.
But we're very fortunate here because I was able to buy a small piece of land, 77 acres in Ireland in 1990, from a friend of a friend, and I just had that land and I rented a few boxes. And over the years, whenever I have a good yearling sales, I bought a little bit of land here and there and so on. So I send my weaned foals from here. They go to Ireland. So I keep my foals and then yearlings in Ireland for about, certainly 12 months and often 15 months. So it means that they have the best of both worlds, because the soil and herbage in Ireland is obviously different from here, but we keep more or less permanent analysis going of soil and herbage, and there are a few minuscule deficiencies here, and ditto. There's a little bit of selenium deficiency here in Newmarket, and whereas in Ireland there is very little copper, and so you can nowadays balance it very easily in the feed, and so it works very well. But of course my foals and yearlings have, to my mind, an advantage of going on Irish grass and so on. So, and also because when you have colts, you need to have, they take up a whole heck of a lot of room, colts, because the paddock they're in, and then you need to have paddocks either side of them empty. You can't have fillies upsides them, or mares and so on. So that's why they take up a lot of room. And so it makes for much better use of the land here in Newmarket to have the young stock over there. And I oscillate by Ryanair, and I get up at 4 in the morning, leave here at 5:30, and then I come back at about 9:30 in the evening. So I know I've had a full days of work, but I get to inspect each animal individually. And I do that about once every 3 weeks, the year round, and it works very well. And
it's remarkable.
From having started with 150 acres here, and then 10 years later, the first 77 acres in Ireland, and now I've reached saturation point. So we now have about 1,100 acres, 1,125 or something like that, between here and Ireland, and it's about 700 acres here and the balance in Ireland. But I remember when I first came into the business, one was taught 3 acres per mare and follower.
Yes.
And we now have about 9+ acres per mare and follower. But it doesn't quite work out like that because of it being half and half, the different countries. But it works very well.
Do you have to keep the do you have, like within that area here, do you have the boys and the mares completely
the yearling colts, they are already in Ireland. They go when they are weaned foals. So as do the fillies, of course. So we don't really have any males here except the stallions and so on. So it works very well, and I think it's a good thing to have yearlings away from the breeding stock, because their handling is really quite specialised. You need experienced people handling yearlings, and I'm lucky to have such.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you very much
not at all. It's all very superficial, I'm afraid, what I had to say to you.
So lovely. It's so I almost feel emotional for you, because it's just, I can feel your passion and your love through the way you speak about it.
I think one gets emotional, but the thing is, what I feel is so important is the few times when everything falls into place, when long laid plans actually come to fruition and so on. And you're standing there in the heaving rain in Paris, and things are, the going is atrocious. The French won't play ball. They've got no seats, they've got no tickets, they've got no lunch. None of this mattered, actually, but the thing that mattered was that decades of work, not only mine, but that of my team, that decades of work, it all fell into place, that one. Those 3.5 minutes or whatever it is, going 1.5 miles in heavy going round Longchamp, and it came right. And it was sort of an amazing
relief?
Recognition,
like relief?
Yes, relief in some way, but more the recognition for the work.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.